Hey, everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live, headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, brought to you by Lacrosse Boots. Now, if you guys haven't had the opportunity to check out the Navigator series, it's a brand new lineup from Lacrosse. They have the Windrose for men and women. They also have the Atlas, and that's what I wore during my rut vacation this fall. Check them out. They're very comfortable. It's a traditional rubber boot, kind of mixed with a traditional hunting, hiking boot. They've mashed it together, and the outcome is the Navigator series. Check it out at lacrossefootwear.com.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. On this podcast, Johnny Carrol Sain comes to the Bear Hunting Magazine global headquarters. Johnny is a freelance outdoor writer located in the central Ozarks. He's a self-proclaimed philosophical hillbilly and a cultural observer, and he's written about hunting and fishing for a couple of decades. We have a conversation about where modern hunting is going and how it's basically a hat tip, or us paying homage to our hunter-gatherer roots, or in Johnny's words, the homage. We talk about baiting deer, and we talk about the concept of place inside of hunting. You're going to enjoy this podcast with Johnny Carrol Sain. Check out our full line and new line of merchandise at bear-hunting.com. We have a new flashy series. That's what we're calling it, flashy hats. One says flashy mule, one says bear grease, and one says bear dogs. Unique, cool hat. We also have hoodies, long sleeve t-shirts, and regular t-shirts, and a bunch of other stuff available on our website and our new flashy series. Check that out on bear-hunting.com. And if you aren't a subscriber to Bear Hunting Magazine, hey, check it out. 6 times per year, you'll get Bear Hunting Magazine delivered to your door. Incredible, incredible service. Hey, just like old times, getting a magazine delivered to your door that you can read at your leisure. bear-hunting.com. Johnny Carrol Sain. I've been meaning to ask you this. Where does the Carrol come from?
That was my dad's middle name.
Really? So that's your middle name?
Junior, yes, my middle name. I actually didn't use it most of my life, but when I started writing and needed a bigger Google presence, I used it because I've got a distant relative named Johnny Sain that played for the New York Yankees. And he won a few pennants, and should have made the Hall of Fame, I think. But that's another story.
Really, he was
good. Yeah, there was a saying.
Was he distant relative, or was like a second cousin? or something?
No, he's distant. I wrote a story about him actually for Arkansas Life a couple of years ago, and then part of that story was trying to figure out how we were related because everyone I meet, he was from Yell County, which is the county south of where I live in Polk County, and so a lot of people I'd meet would hear my name and ask if we were related. And I didn't know. Sain's not a common last name, so I'm sure that we were. And then I did digging around, and actually it was kind of by chance that his group of Sains ended up in Arkansas, and my group of Sains were in Arkansas. They took similar paths, but there was a split a long way.
Okay, so you didn't know him, like he wasn't at your Thanksgiving.
Nope, never. I'd never met him before he passed away.
So you added the middle name in as a
recognition. So people would be able to have a distinction. This is Johnny Carrol Sain, the writer, as opposed to
sense.
Johnny Franklin Sain, the baseball player.
Yeah, I've never thought about using my middle name in my writing, but it kind of does set you apart. There's something about a 3-word name that I think grabs people,
and you get that hard K sound, which is I don't know. I like that, and I don't have that in any other part of my name. So
sounds good. Now, see, my first name is Aaron. So that would be a lot of explaining because I'm, Aaron Clay Newcomb is my name. So I go by my middle name. My parents, on two of their boys, one of my brothers, they went with a first name for whatever reason, and then the middle name was the name that they went by. Yeah,
that's
so I don't know. They had full intentions of calling me Clay, but they named me Aaron Clay. So I don't know. I'll think about this as I'm branding my writing. Johnny, you're a. I think I've heard somewhere, and it may have been you that said it, or may have been somebody that said it about you, but I heard the term hillbilly philosopher.
Oh yeah, my website.
Well, maybe it was your website.
My personal website is the Philosophical Hillbilly.
There we go.
It doesn't imply that I'm super smart or anything. It basically
well, I like it.
I tend to think I'm an overthinker, and that was I thought actually the tagline on the website is overthinking rural culture.
Okay,
because that's what I tend to do is overthink things and dissect them and figure out why we do this and why I do that, and
right.
So that was behind the name. One of my favorite writers, Edward Abbey, said that part of the writer's job is to be a critic of his culture. And so I thought, analyzing rural culture and specifically rural mountain culture, southern mountain culture, which is I'm a product of, was part of my job. So that figured in the name as well.
I want to talk to you about rural mountain culture and your observation as a cultural observer. I also read that on a tagline somewhere. But before we do that, I'm Edward Abbey. I bought an Edward Abbey book a year ago because I'd heard quite a bit about him and had read some very interesting quotes by him. But when I actually read one of the books, he was like super dark.
Yeah, he's pretty dark.
Too dark for me.
Which book did you read?
It was a little bitty book.
Was it Desert Solitaire?
No, it was like a collection of short stories. And it was, when I say little, I literally mean it was like a pocketbook almost. I'd have to look what it was, but as I read it, I was like, when you read a writer, you kind of can see, you hear what they say, you hear their ideas and thoughts, but ultimately you see into kind of who they are. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this guy's dark. Mm-hmm. So anyway, he had some very interesting quotes, one of which I use or I talk about sometimes. I won't be able to quote it verbatim, but he had a quote about how men came from being warriors, tamers of horses, and poets to being office clerks and accountants, and how you couldn't stamp out, a gazillion years of that stuff to now fully make us these domesticated things that we are now. Do you know what quote
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
I can't remember it verbatim either, but I'm familiar with the quote, and I agree with it.
I liked it, but so I like him in like little snippets.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was a little dark. Actually, his cultural roots are very close to ours here. He's from the mountains of Pennsylvania,
Okay.
and like my family, we talked about the Sains. That's where they came from. They came in the port of Philadelphia and came down through Pennsylvania through the Appalachians, North Carolina, Tennessee, and then on over into Arkansas. And so a lot of the roots of the culture are the same, and that dark kind of almost, I don't know the right words to describe it, but it's not necessarily fatalistic, though some of it is.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I can relate to him. A lot of his works, they resonate with me.
Mm-hmm.
But that quote specifically is a strong quote. And he's right. I mean, actually, for millions of years, we were this, and now we live in a largely abstract world. Yeah. The worlds that we occupy, that you and I occupy as a writer and as a magazine publisher and writer and all that, that's living in the abstract. Yeah. Whereas years before we lived in more of a flesh and blood world. We were taming horses and, unfortunately killing other people. We're completely different creatures than we were back then. I thought that was a good point he made.
Yeah. So you talked about your family coming to Arkansas. So you grew up in the southern Ozarks. And do you know when your family came to the Ozarks?
No, and I grew up the Sains are from Newton County, and I grew up in Pope County, just a county south. And I know that we go back, the Sains, and then my grandmother, paternal grandmother, her maiden name was Heffley. And Heffleys are everywhere.
Oh, really? Over there?
Oh, yes. I'm not exactly sure when either bunch came to Newton County, but they've been there for generations. Mount Judy, which was kind of the epicenter of the whole C&H hog farm thing on the Buffalo. Mount Judy, everybody in the cemetery, I like to say I'm probably related to everyone in the cemetery there. Yeah. Still a lot of people that live there. And I'm thinking at least 5 or 6 generations on that side. The Sains probably were a little later.
To give people context, Newton County, I believe it is the least populated county in Arkansas.
It's close.
Maybe some of those southern counties.
Yeah, maybe some of the southern counties where it's all farmland.
Yeah, you're right.
But it's close, and it's also one of the poorest counties. Jasper's the county seat, and they got 300 people in the county seat.
I think 15, 18 years ago, there were like 8,000 people in Newton County.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Something like that.
And part of what makes it seem really, really, wild to me is a large portion of it's public land.
Yes. So Newton County is, I tell people that Newton County would be like the epicenter of the Ozarks. Yeah. Geographically.
I think so. And it's in the Boston Mountains still, which is, more rugged than, you and I were talking earlier about how you go north from your place here and it actually starts looking like the Great Plains a little bit. You get on top of the Ozark Plateau. The Boston Mountains where we are now and then going east toward Newton County, they even get more rugged from here.
Yeah.
And
Newton would be as rugged as we have. Not necessarily biggest, because the biggest mountains in Arkansas that's not where they're at, the tallest elevation. Mm-hmm. But in terms of just like steepness, karst topography, deep hollows and bluffs and rocky.
Going places that hadn't seen very many people or any people. Maybe I'm a little bit being romantic about this, but I think there are places in Newton County that probably haven't seen people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably my favorite county. And I've not spent a lot of time there. I don't think I've ever hunted Newton County. I mean, we kind of just were like the classic tourists over there, on the Buffalo River and stuff, but it is spectacular. I've never had a reason to say this, but now that we're talking about Arkansas and getting here, I'll use this as a reason to say this. The only reason I know this is because there was a Newcomb family book that I have nothing to do with, but we have this Newcomb book, and it's a genealogy book, and it's like hundreds of pages long. And somebody in our family put it together. I mean, nobody that I know, but the book goes down to my father's name is actually in the book, so it goes down to him. And so I'm a 7th generation Arkansan, and so my kids would be 8th generations Arkansans. And Joseph Newcomb came from Scotland and then ended up in Kentucky. I guess came through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky, and then ended up homesteading in Montgomery County, Arkansas, which is down in the Ouachitas, down in a little community called Bumblebee, Arkansas.
Never heard of Bumblebee, Arkansas.
But they came to Arkansas in 1829.
Wow.
Yeah, we have no family land. I mean, that story sounds really cool, and I love that story. But again, that the only reason I know that is because just by chance, some Newcomb did their homework.
Somebody recorded it,
and it wasn't anybody that I know. But and we don't really have we have ties down there still, but we don't have like family farms or anything. But anyway, I'm always interested in people that have deeper connections around here.
And I think part of mine is in Newton County. My grandparents owned a store, and actually there's a lot of people in my family that owned stores. In Mount Judy, little old Mount Judy, I had 2 great aunts that owned stores. Who knew there'd be 2 stores in Mount Judy? Yeah. And then my grandparents, DeVoe and Lois, they owned Sain's Grocery on Highway 7 between Lurton and Jasper. Actually, Lurton and Cal, if you want to be more specific. And then my uncle Dennis owns it now. It's Who'd Have Thought It gift shop. So if you
thought it?
Yeah, if you ever go up Highway 7, Newton County, that's there's a little
it's
white
still
house.
There,
it's still there. Yeah, there's a little white house behind the store. That's where my dad grew up. And because my family owned businesses and again, like I said, the Heffley side, they were everywhere. I have name recognition, Newton County, and also, man, I look a lot like my dad, and I've been at the Elk Fest in Jasper, and I've had people from across the town square say, "Hey, you're Johnny's boy, you're DeVoe's grandson," and they've never met me.
Yeah, but they could tell.
They could tell, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, for never living there, I have a lot of connections and a lot of, I really feel at home there.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah.
That's neat. Roots seem to be lost in a lot of our culture today, but it's neat. Talk to me about Ozark culture. I don't know. Give me so you're a cultural observer, or what's your interest in this part of the world?
It started wanting to understand why I'm the way I am.
Yeah. Which
I think, being introspective is probably the gateway to a lot of education and seeking knowledge. But I wanted to understand more the way I was. And really when this hit, I went back to college when I was 40 years old.
Okay.
To finish my degree. And I had to take an anthropology class. And that's probably where it started. And then that led to, again, more curiosity about why I'm the way I am, why this place is the way it is, culturally. And so I started digging, in the roots of our culture, which is probably for a lot of Southern culture, and especially Southern mountain culture and the Appalachians and the Ozarks, is Scots-Irish culture.
Yeah.
And you just said your grandpa or your ancestors came over from Scotland.
Yeah.
Mine did too, for sure, on my mom's side. It gets a little hazy on my dad's, but they were Scots-Irish.
Yeah.
And that's the basis of all of this culture. It's there's a book I read, one section of a book. There's a book called Albion Seed, and it's about 7 different English or British cultures that came over here to the U.S. And one section of that book is about the Scots-Irish culture. It's called Borderlands to the Backcountry, and it was basically a collection of observances from other folks about what they experienced in the United States in these areas that were populated by Scots-Irish people. And what I found really interesting and was that a lot of the behavior they saw and recorded, I could actually see today.
Do you have an example of it?
Well, example is what you and I are wearing. We're sitting here. We both got beards.
Yes.
We're wearing flannel shirts.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
We're basically dressed the same.
We're basically, we both got on boots. You got on more Western style boots, but I've got on more hiking boots. That style of clothing came over. Wider brimmed hats. The way women dress. A lot of our food, a lot of our drink, of course, whiskey is a big one. They came over from Scotland and Ireland over to here, and then
now with kind of an epicenter of making whiskey would be Tennessee, Southern Appalachians.
Tennessee. That's right.
That right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And and then illegal whiskey, moonshine. That's of course legend and all through Appalachian and the Ozarks.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is still present. It's our attitudes. Attitudes about animals, about environmental issues.
Okay.
Most Scots-Irish culture is mostly utilitarian.
Okay.
It's based on, largely that population was poor.
Yeah.
And you didn't really think about the ethics or the why you were doing this when you went out to kill an animal to eat.
I see.
You didn't really worry about, especially when you saw endless trees, about how much you cut to build or to heat your home, because you didn't have any other options.
Yeah.
This is where we are.
Poverty produces a certain mentality that excludes a lot of other considerations.
It does, and you don't think very far into the future because your existence is day to day.
Yeah.
So,
I feel that right now, Johnny.
I do too, often. That's carries over. And so, I wanted to explore why why I was this way, why I was that way, and this is where it led.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good in the culture, let me say, there's a lot that I'm proud of in the culture.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of bad. There's a lot of stuff that we need to maybe think, maybe we need to do this differently now that we know more. And actually understanding our culture is, I said something earlier about being a critic of the culture. That's what allowed me to be a critic. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that necessarily looking for all the bad things.
Sure.
What I mean is analyzing the culture.
Yeah.
And parsing it out and deciding, these are the things that were really great and these are the things that are not so great. Maybe we need to take another look at these things and why we're doing them.
Yeah. Introspection does that because we are handed a whole playbook of how to be humans by default.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is the order of the planet.
Yeah.
Is that you are handed a playbook of how to be a human by default, and you don't know any different unless you look outside of that and try to find a different pattern. Or
You're exactly right.
Take different patterns from other places.
Right. And that, and I've often wondered why more people don't do that. It's really uncomfortable lots of times.
Yeah.
Because you have to confront some things that, again, maybe aren't really good.
Yeah.
You have to accept them. This is the way we did things, and that wasn't the right way to do things. And, the list is long. We could fill up a day talking about all the stuff we thought was okay back, hundreds of years ago, and it's not now.
Yeah.
But coming to terms with that, realizing, that we need to change this, or I'm glad we changed this, and not everything was as rosy maybe as it was portrayed to us. Not everything was good for us.
Do you think that utilitarian ideology of environment and wildlife that certainly was here, and I mean it was all over North America.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this idea that we had like this vast, endless resources of wildlife that we could just use at our discretion.
Yeah.
Like we've come a long way from that, but we probably still have some of that.
We do have that. We still, and it's hard to get into a lot of that attitude comes from a dominion mindset. And that was that came down from Europe, of course, and it clashed with almost every indigenous culture mindset across the world.
Describe to me dominion mindset.
Dominion mindset is, well, it comes from Genesis, Book of Genesis.
Right.
When Yahweh said, all this is for you, and you use it how you want to.
Yeah. Okay.
And that could be interpreted different ways.
Sure.
Some people interpret it as being stewards.
Yeah.
And that, we use it, but we're responsible for it. We're responsible for the well-being of this place.
Yeah.
And then some people have the attitude that, I can just take what I want because it was given to me with no regard to really anything else.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to I don't want to say that there's nuance involved.
Yeah.
Like we just talked about with poor people, poor folks, man, you don't really or you can't afford to contemplate, again, why you're doing this or why you're doing that. You got to eat, you got to stay warm, you got to stay clothed, you got to keep shelter going or keep shelter up. So there's not you don't have that luxury. Yeah. And I'm well aware of that. Now, nowadays, for the most part, most of us, we do have that luxury. What we take from nature, we can think about.
Yeah.
We can be thoughtful in our choices and our uses.
Yeah.
But those old ways, those older utilitarian ways that were born out of necessity are hard to shake.
Yes.
They're very hard to shake.
I want to talk about modern outdoor media with you. Mm-hmm. There's some things though about the modern narrative inside of hunting that are positive. And let me I'm making a point here. I was talking to somebody recently that was a hunter, longtime hunter, almost zero influence from modern outdoor media. That came along with some good stuff, but also came along with some stuff that I felt like they weren't totally updated on, just the whole idea of being selective inside of hunting, the whole idea of being, having a conservation mind frame, like what's the best animal to take out for whatever the management purposes were for the region, like what would be the best animal for me to take out, and I'm going to set my sights on taking out that animal and not something else. Kind of just like movement away from like the brown is down philosophy for all of hunting. Mm-hmm. And it was like I saw some holes kind of in the philosophy. And anyway, that being said, somebody that was being influenced by outdoor media today could take some of the good stuff and it be totally translated in something negative. Mm-hmm. Anyway, just talking about the old philosophies, this utilitarian use of the landscape. I guess I'm trying to decide where the changes need to come, where it was good and where it was bad, and where we're at today. Well, is that a fair? It is starting point.
Again, a lot of these discussions, there's so much nuance. It's hard to, it's not black and white, and it's not there are caveats everywhere. Speaking frankly, I'm closer to a brown is down guy than I am a management or a trophy hunter.
Yeah.
I don't. Years ago, I started going down the, mature whitetail bucks only, which is tough to do on public land in Arkansas.
Yes.
Started going down that road a little bit, and there were aspects of that just weren't really palatable to me. I think probably the final straw, I killed a couple on that quest in consecutive years. But the final straw was that I watched a guy that I knew pretty well throw a hissy fit at the Big Buck Classic because his deer didn't measure out like he thought it should.
Yeah.
And man, I don't want to say that I'm going to say that was the straw that broke the camel's back. There was a lot of other stuff building up to that, but I'm like, I don't know if this is the right mindset for hunting.
Yeah.
And so, now, and this ties into all other things in my worldview. We live on venison. My family does.
Yeah.
Because of my thoughts and attitude about animals in general, I'm not real crazy about buying industrial farm meat.
Yeah.
I don't buy meat from the grocery store.
Yeah.
We live on venison. We live on squirrel. We buy some pork and some other meat from people that raise them the right way. And so my attitude when I go hunting is number one is I want to fill the freezer.
Yeah.
But I approach that not in so much as this is mine to take, is that, and again, it's hard.
Say it, man. I love it.
I know,
I love it.
It's hard to put all
I
this
want
into
you to
words,
tell me
though.
why I'm wrong for hunting the way I do, because I'm duplicitous sometimes.
Well, I am too, and I wrestle with all this. And
Sure.
I understand that where we are today with human population and development. We do have to manage deer herds. We do have to manage animal herds or animal populations. But at the same time, it almost feels. Again, searching for the right words is tough. It feels like we're getting away from hunting the hunting that made us human, which was utilitarian.
Yes.
We hunted to eat.
Yeah.
So, and what we're doing now, and I wrote this, you and I had a discussion, I think, online about an article I wrote where this was in there. What we're doing now with hunting, really modern day hunting, is an homage to what we were.
Okay.
We're trying to capture some of that. We're trying to get
What's
back.
the word you just used?
Homage.
What does that mean?
It means like
Like a partial representation?
yeah,
Or like a
well, it's like
shadow?
we're paying tribute to it.
Okay.
Like we're
Yeah.
this
I
is
see what you're
something.
saying.
This is who we were. This is where we came from, and these roots that go back all these eons, are still producing. They're still leafing out on us. All this stuff that we were, and so we want to try to capture some of that.
It's kind of like a hat tip to what we used to be.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
I'm with
a
you.
recognition probably is the best way to say it.
Homage. Is that the word you use?
HOMAGE.
Okay.
I think. I mean,
Okay.
double check that. I don't have a spell check in
It's all
front
right.
of me.
It's all right.
But it's like a hat tip, like a recognition that this is where we come from. And so when you start throwing these other things into
These
the mix,
other variables like size of an animal
Yes.
or management
yes,
of a herd of
then
animals.
you're getting away from that a little bit. And
Yeah.
again, I recognize the need,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it feels then almost contrived.
Yes.
It feels like we're trying to give ourselves justification for doing this stuff, and we don't really need it
Yeah.
because this is what we do.
Yeah.
So man, we've gone all the way around here, and I forgot where we started.
No, we were talking about, you were telling me about, because I used the phrase brown is down in almost a negative sense. And you know what? I'm trying to say this simply. Some people have given me some flack for talking too much about being selective inside of hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm mainly talking about black bear.
Oh, okay.
when I went about selection.
And that's completely different.
It's and that's the point I was going to make about deer hunting. Even though I'm pretty selective with some portion of my deer hunting,
Mm-hmm.
like we go out and shoot does and just have a blast.
Oh, yeah.
And we do, and we do the same. We live off whitetail deer meat, and but when it comes to bucks, we're selective. Just this last weekend, I told my 14-year-old son and my 11-year-old son, I said, don't shoot spikes and forked horns.
Yeah.
I told them that. And my son passed 3 legal bucks. This is a CWD zone, so we don't have antler restriction. Yeah. And he passed 3 legal bucks last weekend and hadn't killed a deer this year. And I felt good about that. Now, he had full right to shoot a doe or to shoot a big buck. So it was kind of like a collection of those two worlds, because.
Well, let me stop you right there. You mentioned, okay, so let me ask you this, and I'm going to challenge you here.
Yeah.
If we're talking about you're in a CWD zone and the Game and Fish want you to kill these small bucks, wouldn't that be the management?
Hypocrite.
I mean, I'm just.
No, you're exactly right, because the small bucks, the ones that are distributed.
They're moving more.
You're right. And I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
And see, and that's where all of us, I think, have this hypocrisy, because I'm talking about, I mean, when I'm being selective on bucks, I'm doing it for one reason, because we want to kill a big buck.
Yeah.
I mean, and I guess I'm just okay with that.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
I haven't killed
that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up.
But it's just something to think about. And, I'm not really selective. Actually, we need 4 deer to feed us. If we get 4 deer, that's, even if they're all 4 does, that's roughly 160 pounds of venison to get us through. And that's what I need to feed. Right now it's mostly my wife and me that are at home most of the time. My youngest daughter's 18, so she sometimes eats dinner with us, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But we need 4 does. And so the first 3 deer that come by, I'm, not fawns, because they don't have enough meat.
Okay.
But the first 3 deer that come by, I'm probably going to try to put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
After that, especially if one of them is a buck, I'm going to be a little more selective, mostly because I don't want to extend my season.
Yeah.
I don't want to quit yet.
Yep.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you I don't like big antlers. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
I had not killed an older class buck, and when I say older on public land, I'm talking 3 years old or older.
Yep.
I hadn't done that in a few years, and this year I was lucky to kill one in the national forest that was about 3.5 years old.
It's even a little bit different playing field, though. We're hunting here in Washington County, private land.
Yeah, that's different.
It really is, man.
I mean,
different. Any afternoon we can go out and see deer and probably kill a deer if we wanted to. Mm-hmm. I mean, the hunting the deer populations are that high. So we feel a little bit more liberty to be selective.
That is different.
Now, hunting in Ozark National Forest like you're doing, just to kill a deer is a big deal.
It is. It's a challenge. And to kill a 3.5-year-old buck,
so if that was all the hunting that I was doing, my world would be different.
Well, and
you know what I mean?
That may be the biggest difference in our philosophies about them, because almost all of my hunting is done on public land.
Yeah.
And a large part of it is in the Ozark National Forest, and some of it is over at Hollow Bend National Wildlife Refuge.
See, again, I live in multiple worlds at the same time. When we hunt private land here in Washington County, we're pretty darn selective. I also hunt in Ouachita National Forest down there, and I've been trying to kill just a buck for the last 3 seasons, pretty hard and heavy.
Yeah.
And I did pass one that I wish I hadn't. But oh man, it's a different world down there. And it means if I killed a mature buck down there where I'm hunting, it would mean more to me than all these private land deer from Arkansas. It really would.
Yeah, I understand. There's a correlation. There's a relationship there between the effort and the degree of difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but and the feelings of satisfaction. I get that completely.
Well, this is a great example of how a part of what is the difficulty of hunting, and probably of every other human endeavor where people are gathered together around a passion and activity, is that you're playing on a different field in the Ozark National Forest than the guy in Southeast Kansas.
Yeah.
But we're trying to have the same conversation.
Yes.
And so it's hard for
completely different perspectives. And
1,000%.
I have limitations. Not only do I hunt public land, and I'm not saying my way is the best way or everyone needs to do it, but I have pretty principled limitations on how I hunt. I don't use a camera. I don't use any kind of bait. I don't use any scents. I have a cover scent, smells a little bit like white oak acorns.
That's cheating, Johnny.
That's the only thing I use. And I hunt a bow hunt. I haven't gun hunted in 25 years.
Really?
Well,
So you're just bow hunting?
well, to give you, I've been bow hunting. I've been hunting since I was a kid. I've killed one deer with a rifle, and I've killed probably, and I'm not bragging, just to give you an idea where I'm coming from. And against over 30 years, like I've killed 100 and some odd deer with a bow.
on public land?
Well, not all of them. Some of them have been
Yeah.
on private land.
Yeah.
But I only bow hunt. I try to limit my shots. Years ago, I tried to go down what you're doing now with stick bow.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't to the level of accuracy that I thought I needed to be. I ended up killing one doe with a stick bow, and then I thought, man, I'm just not there. But again, kind of paying homage to that spirit, I'd limit my shots to 25 yards with the compound. And so I've got these stipulations, already set in the degree of difficulty is pretty high.
Yeah.
And so when I get a deer within 25 yards, broadside, doing it that way, I don't know if I'm probably going to shoot.
And I didn't know you were bow hunting.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew you did bow hunt.
Yeah,
but I didn't know that you were exclusive.
Pretty exclusive.
Man, to kill 4 deer with a bow on public land in the Ozark National Forest, that's a big season.
It is.
That's a lot of you don't just go out and see deer probably even every time you hunt.
No, I don't. There are a lot of deer, but figuring out exactly where they're going to come through again, 25 yards from you.
Yeah.
No, you don't see deer every time. You don't see large numbers of deer.
Right.
It's a totally different. And again, I've hunted private land. I was on a lease for a few years, and it was nothing there to set on a food plot and see 15 deer.
Yeah.
And pretty much any evening you wanted to.
Yeah.
No, that's not the way it is now. I keep a journal, and I think I had look right quick, but I think I hunted 19 times this year, and I've seen 29 deer.
Oh wow!
And that's just what I've seen. And let's see, 29 deer, and I've had with deer within 30 yards of me. I've had 11 does and 8 bucks.
I'll be darned. That's good intel.
And I tagged out. Killed my 6th deer 2 days ago.
Did you really?
Yeah,
with your bow.
With my bow.
That's doing something, Johnny.
So I'm done, which I'm a little sad about.
For real. See, I was thinking you were gun hunting a lot.
Nope.
That's doing something, man.
Said I haven't done that again. It's probably been 25 years.
I'll be darned. Wow, that's awesome, man.
And that was actually the deer I killed gun hunting was at Devil's Den. I was with my father-in-law.
Oh, really? Over here?
Yeah, not far from here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be darned. Well, let's see. Homage. That's a new word. I like that. I guess in a way, I feel like that the hunting space that I live in is exactly that. It's an homage. It's a hat tip to what we were, but we've added some layers of complexity to it. Almost like, we're sitting here in a modern building with sheetrock and, asphalt shingles. And, it's like, we used to live in huts made from buffaloes. I don't know what they're made of, but I mean, like we used to live in primitive shelters. Well, this is a more complex shelter, and so like adding in this idea of, in the word trophy hunting is such a loaded word, even though the roots of trophy hunting, that phrase came from the Boone and Crockett Club in 1889 when they were trying to take the emphasis off the young and females, coming from a market hunting mentality of people that were killing deer and critters to make a living. Yeah. We
need the populations. They need to help the populations.
They were trying to find a way. They were trying to find a way to change the whole of the hunting culture. And so they put a quantitative value on antlers and horns. And they said, and they in the way they did, they were like, this has value. And so trophy hunting. Have you ever heard it said that trophy hunting is actually what saved North American wildlife?
I have.
And
I agree with that. It changed the mentality.
It changed the mentality. It took the emphasis off females and young and put it on older age class males, so it's almost like now that's still there, and that has become polluted, just like any human endeavor. There's this original strain that was probably pretty pure, and then it can sprout off and turn into something terrible.
Oh yeah, I think that trophy hunting probably has roots way back when we did have to, hunt to live. I know I've read quite a bit about the San people, which you may have heard them called the Bush people in the Kalahari in Africa. One of the last hunter-gatherer cultures still going. And I'm not sure their status right now, but I know there's a video on YouTube that's probably one of my favorite. I don't watch many hunting videos, but it's one of my favorite where it shows some of those men pursuing a kudu. And they actually chose that kudu with the biggest horns because it had the most body mass, and it would tire the quickest. And they ran this sucker down. I mean, they weren't sitting in a stand.
Foot.
They ran it down.
Okay.
And that's why they chose it, though. It was carrying more weight. It would overheat quicker, and they could kill it quicker.
Do you think that was just a justification for them to get the one with the big horns?
No, I don't think
Are they not doing the same thing we're doing?
No, I don't think they cared at all about the horns. But so there's, and then,
So that's interesting because I've never heard of roots of, that's what I was about to ask you, if you knew in the literature of Native American tribes that gave precedence to big antler game.
There's something very appealing about big antlers, of course. But I don't know of anything that's quite as, direct as that video I just told you about. Yeah. But also associated, and it's still this way, of course, there's a lot of ego attached to antler size.
Sure.
And there's some prestige when you bring that big beast in.
Would that have a European influence too?
I think it's indigenous, and it started in indigenous cultures in Europe and Africa and probably in North America. Typically animals that carry bigger headgear have more meat. That's more stuff.
Okay. So it represented something more than that.
Yeah.
It's like big antlers would also be connected to big meat.
Yeah, big meat. And again, all this other stuff that's still part of it today. You outsmarted and killed a wise animal.
An older one.
An older animal.
Yeah.
I mean,
but would a meat culture put value on that, or would they just be happy they had meat? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, probably. But there's probably a little bit of both. The relationship that those cultures had with the animals, they were meat, of course, but then they also viewed them, and again, I'm not an expert, but I think that largely the relationship was, it was deeper than just the meat.
Yeah. Okay.
There was more to it than that. And they, of course, they lived they had relationships with these animals that we can't understand because we don't have to kill them to eat.
Yeah.
We don't, that's part of what I'm trying to get back is foster that relationship with whitetails, that indigenous, my ancestors back in Europe had with red deer.
Right.
This relationship that, is of course grateful and, it's not totally sincere because I'm not dependent on the meat, but I want to be dependent on the meat.
Man, I've never really thought about it, but I want to stop you because I like that idea that you want to regain the connection with the animal that we hunt as if it was our whole sustenance.
Yeah.
Because like the Native American tribes that relied on buffalo, like that would have informed the way that they viewed that animal because it was legitimate. I mean, it wasn't, you couldn't fabricate what they had. You couldn't fabricate it today.
The depth of the relationship. Yeah. It was so much deeper than most people, and that's what I'm trying to reach.
What do you think the end goal of that is, Johnny? I mean, like, what does it look like? Because,
that changes your whole attitude. And I've noticed it in myself trying to get there. It changes my attitude about everything. It changes my attitude about the deer, specifically this specific deer that I killed. I have a different attitude about it now than I did before. It's not just an animal I'm shooting. It also changes my views about where I killed the deer. Now I have a more holistic view of everything. I understand that, this deer is a product of the forest, and the forest is a product of these eons of time, and I'm struggling here for the right words.
No.
I wrote an essay called Blood Brother last year that tried to put into words how I felt about the deer. And actually,
Can we read that online?
Yeah, you can read it online. It's published in Hatch magazine, which is a fly fishing magazine. But Chad Schmuckler, the editor, gives me some liberties on what I write for him. But I actually drew inspiration from a bear hunting story in Arkansas called The Big Bear of Arkansas.
Yeah.
And the character is a fiction, but
Jim Daggett.
Yeah, Doggett,
Doggett.
because he's a hunter, dogged. I think that's where he got it.
Doggett.
Yeah, Doggett.
Gotcha.
But anyway, the fictional character Doggett said that this bear he was pursuing, which was a legend, that he loved the bear like a brother.
Yes.
And I wrestled with that. What does that mean?
He said that while the dogs wasn't he watching the dogs chase this bear, and he said, I saw him running up the mountain and I loved him like a brother.
Yes, I think that's what it was.
It was like in the heat. It wasn't like after he killed it.
No, it was in the heat of the pursuit. It was in the pursuit that he came to this,
I've forgotten about that.
Yeah.
I read that, and that struck a chord with me, and I'm glad. Yeah, he said he loved him like a brother.
Yeah. And so, but wrapped up in all those, sometimes uncomfortable emotions, and most men especially have a hard time saying they love anything. But, my feelings about the whitetail deer were strong already, but through this, again, contrived dependence, because I don't want to eat any other meat. It's created a deeper. Again, I told you, and I'm stumbling for words.
If you were writing it, it'd flow
it'd
like
be
rain.
easier. Yeah, well, I'd have to write a bunch of stuff and then go back and edit it and come up with these new thoughts. Have time to think
You're a
about
great
it.
writer, man. I'm just.
It's harder for me to put on the spot to come up with the words because it's such a complex subject.
Well, I think what you're describing, though, is the thing that we see we see a shadow of it inside of this just general idea of respect for the game that we harvest. Except I recognize that what you're saying, I think, is probably deeper. I think sometimes, in outdoor media, we've heard that word so much that maybe we think that just means when you kill an animal, just look at it and touch it and say, wow, I really respect this and think it's beautiful and am grateful for the meat. I don't know, just kind of
it's become a little hollow, yeah, because people have overused it. But it does mean more than that. Not just, and I'm thinking, again, speculating, because I can't get in the mind of hunter-gatherer culture, but I can't have a hard time believing that this didn't happen. Lots of times when someone killed an animal, was not only was there the realization, of course, that this is meat that's going to feed us, but also a sense of kinship, in the sense that, my mortality, I'm mortal. I'm going to die one of these days too, just like this deer died, not in the same manner, but it's a confrontation of your own mortality.
What do you think it would look like when you reached a place of satisfaction about that sensing?
I don't know that I ever will. In that essay I wrote about, gutting the deer and, looking at all the internal organs and realizing that they're the same things that are in me.
Yeah.
The stomach, the intestines, moving up on it, and the heart and lungs. And I remember I pulled out his heart. It was a buck that I killed that I wrote about, and I pulled out his heart, and, it was probably a little bigger than mine. But probably in almost every other way, it looked exactly the same as mine does.
Yeah.
And so this understanding and acknowledgement, that's of my place, as not necessarily a human, but as an animal. That's kind of what I'm looking for. And again, when you do that and you think about those connections, then you often pause to confront your own mortality.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the first things that led to a sense of spirituality.
I think the idea is, simple in some way, is that you're looking for a deeper way to connect to this thing that your heart says is really, really highly valuable. I think that inside of hunting, a lot of times I look at the way that the passion that I have for hunting, and I recognize that my words, my actions, my thoughts, my media that I produce does not do justice to what has actually happened.
That's exactly why I'm struggling with this.
Well,
I can't. I guess this has probably been the aim of a lot of writers, is communicators. How do you put all these emotions and these everything that's encapsulated in that moment? When you release the arrow, pull the trigger. How do you put all that into words? How do you explain that to people that even though they hunt, maybe not see things the same way you do?
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing that we've got to just keep trying to do is to explore that and explain it. And I think it's maybe even simpler than that. We are spiritual beings.
Mm-hmm.
It would be hard for me to even hear someone, a complete atheist that just, didn't, or maybe that's not the right word. What's the other word for someone who,
and there's agnostic,
right? It would be hard for them to even biologically, to me, explain how we wouldn't be a spiritual being, and so to me, when we hunt, like what I'm chasing is an explanation and an understanding of why this thing that I've done, which ultimately roots back to my very primitive roots as a human,
mm-hmm.
it roots back to my family this very day,
mm-hmm.
because like hunting is ultimately provision for family.
It is.
The human nature of I am going to go gather protein for my family so they can live. Even though that's a physical act, I think it captures something.
It's also a spiritual act.
Yeah.
And it's the basis.
And that's why it's hard to describe.
It is. And hunting was the basis of all culture.
Yeah.
It really was. How we get our food
is
the foundation of all culture. And you can go, of course now with globalization, you can find, we can find Cajun food up here in Arkansas. But Louisiana is one of my favorite examples. That entire culture was built, on the food which came from the marsh.
Yeah. Culture, I like what you said. Culture is built upon how we acquire food.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Go back even further. That's,
and then the type of food that we eat is built from the physical environment that we live in.
Yes.
So the region, the mountains,
it's
the
all
river.
It's all encompassed really in the phrase "a sense of place."
Sense of place.
Yeah, and I can't remember who said that first. I don't know if it was Leopold, maybe Wendell Berry. I can't remember. But anyway, having a sense of place, and that ties into my hunting too. I don't hunt anywhere except pretty much the river valley and Ozark Mountains.
Yeah.
There's something about killing and eating these deer that are from the same place I am.
Yeah.
I don't know why it is. I've traveled out of state once or twice for deer, and I used to travel quite a bit for turkeys. But there's something about again these animals that are from my home.
Right.
That there seems to be you're the same way. You said almost all these deer in here are from Arkansas.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is.
I've said that a lot. People that listen to this podcast would know it. is that I put way more value on a locally hunted animal than anything I travel. And I travel a lot. My job has allowed me to travel to hunt bears and travel to hunt some deer. And man, I killed a deer in Canada 3 weeks ago. Big deer. I would trade that Canada deer for a 130-inch Arkansas whitetail buck down in the national forest where I hunt. I promise you, I'm not just saying that. I would throw that deer in the trash if I knew I could go down there and kill one in its place.
I understand.
That has value and I know exactly where I got that from. My dad intentionally built that in us, I think, as a mechanism to calibrate me and probably himself for seeing a lot of guys in the late 80s and early 90s start to travel to hunt. That's kind of when whitetail hunting kind of became really pretty commercialized, and the Midwest became famous, and hunting Canada, and guys started traveling, and guys started elk, and they were doing it before, but it was like the economic status of the U.S. was pretty good in the 80s and 90s, and people started to have a little bit of money and could travel, and we started getting hunting magazines and hunting movies, and I think he saw that and was like, what we're doing is cooler than that.
What are you chasing when you're going out to these places to do it? What are you actually looking for? I mean, why did you go out of state to hunt?
Are you asking me?
Yeah,
or
I'm asking
is this
you.
a rhetorical question?
No, I'm asking you. Why
for
did you
the
go to state?
experience?
I can understand that.
And I mean, and then absolutely to bring home a good animal.
Okay.
I mean, and that's a place where I voluntarily say there's probably some hypocrisy. There's two places that I would reside, because I would reside in this like local hunter that values being able to kill deer within a mile of my house, but then also, yeah, I'll go to Canada and shoot a deer. Bring the meat home.
I understand. I went to Illinois, and I didn't kill a big deer, but I killed a nice deer in Illinois, and I went there because I wanted the big antlers.
Yeah,
that was years ago.
Yeah,
but now I think about that, and
you'd have trouble with that now?
I just wouldn't do it. I can't. I couldn't. No. I've considered the turkeys again because there's just not very many turkeys in Arkansas anymore. But still, I would rather spend 2 weeks chasing a gobbler to the national forest that I may never get a shot at, as I had to go to Kansas
and kill one in the first day.
Yeah. And,
exactly.
Going to Kansas, when I would go, it was like a video game. There were turkeys everywhere. Yeah. And at that time, they weren't messed with. Nobody knew how to hunt them up there. Yeah. But there's something, not only the challenge, but again, that sense of place, I think. There's a connectivity between me and the turkey, or me and the deer, just because we're both from here.
And that is the one thing that you lose when you travel to hunt. Is a sense of place. Like what I think you're getting value from by hunting locally is that, man, I've been here my whole life. I know these mountains. I know these deer. I know what kind of trees these are.
It's a practical application, yes, because you're a much more effective.
And that's not even what I'm saying. I'm even talking about it from like a philosophical standpoint. Like, you know how these mountains were formed. You know where this creek runs to. You know what kind of other animals there are. Like you have a place there.
Yeah.
You have a holistic sense. And then you go to Canada and man, this is where traveling to hunt does, if you bring that same value system, does seem hollow. And it does to me. I mean, I was up in Canada and I'm like a transplant for 1 week to go up there and hunt. And it's that hunt doesn't have the same value to me as this one does.
Do you do any of your own scouting up there, or you just go sit where they tell you to sit?
I've been up there 3 times with the same guy, so I know his farm, and it's it's an outfitted hunt for sure. I mean, it's got to be legally. But
I forgot about that.
But it's more of a deal where you're going to this guy's farm and hunting kind of where you want to. But absolutely, we're hunting in places that he would have shown us, and so and it is a homage to. I mean, it's a hat tip to something that was, because it's not. We're trying to shoot a big deer and bring home a bunch of meat, because those deer are big.
Yeah, those are monsters up there.
Yeah, but no, I absolutely recognize the it's not the same.
No, and it's again, I struggle for anything outside of that very vague statement, sense of place.
Yeah.
I mean, for why I feel that way, but I don't. I do it with all my outdoor pursuits. I want to fish for smallmouth locally. I don't want to travel very far to do that. That's the only reason I can come up with it. And again, trying to define that is tough.
Yeah.
It's just as tough as defining why I set these parameters for the way I want to kill deer, and I don't want to do it another way. Searching for this.
Does that make it wrong though?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to say that it's wrong for anyone else to go out of state and kill deer or go fish or whatever. I like adventure too.
What would a guy need to do to calibrate himself though? Because I think what we're talking about in essence is what's could be wrong with some portion of the hunting world is that we're chasing antlers, we're chasing ego, we're chasing.
I think, actually, I think this for pretty much everything. Lack of thoughtfulness is probably the root of all sin.
Lack of thoughtfulness. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
If you're not considering why you're doing this, if you're not concerned with your motives,
yes,
questioning, and I'm not saying you need to be, justifying or trying to find bad, nitpicking like that. I'm saying that just ask yourself, why am I doing this?
Well, I think you're exactly
right. What am I looking
because
for?
I have no misconceptions of what I'm doing when I go to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
You
know
and
I
what
like
I mean?
that honesty. That's not something that I want to do.
Yes.
But if you're, don't try to paint me this picture and sell me on the idea that you're doing this for all these other reasons, and I think that's actually one of the, we're going to go down another rabbit trail here, but, one of the justifications I hear for hunting is, we talked about earlier was population control.
Right.
I don't know how many people really hunt for that reason. They throw it out there, as justification, but really how many people go kill deer because they think it's doing, helping the environment?
It's just an add-on. It's just a kind of an add-on reason why we should do it.
It's not a bad thing, but don't tell me that.
It's not the only reason.
No,
we're
that's
going
not
out.
why you're doing
we
it.
got to control the deer. Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
So honesty, sincerity, and again, thinking about why you're doing these things.
Yeah. I think that as would be in most of life, having the right internal posture, at least understanding your motivations and being honest about it is important.
Mm-hmm.
Is absolutely important.
And so, we're talking about, we've been dancing around this, I think, but we haven't got to, and it's something we said we want to talk about.
Johnny, pull your mic just a little bit closer.
Right there? Okay. It's something we've danced around a little bit, and you and I talked about talking about it, but, baiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about what it's done in Arkansas for deer, and we're talking about deer.
Yeah, because bear hunting is a totally different.
Yeah,
that's totally different than deer hunting. But you and I've had some off mic discussions about baiting deer and the pros, of course, nowadays is it gets more hunters out there.
Yeah.
I'm hard pressed to find other pros besides that. There's a long list of cons. And top of the list for me is, losing that whole sense of what hunting is about.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I've wrestled with this, and I've hunted over bait. I'm not coming at this from an elitist,
sure,
position. I've done it. I'm not going to say it's necessarily easier all the time, but it does make things a little more predictable.
For sure.
And especially if you're hunting, places that don't see a lot of pressure or on some private land that you only have access to, it makes things easier. But is easier what we need to be doing?
Right.
Is that justification? When actually, the whole point of hunting actually, like we mentioned, an homage to a time when it was much harder.
Yeah.
And we've already got all these other benefits. Man, we got, compound bows, we got rifles, we got scent absorbing clothing, heck fire, we got the ozone stuff now that's supposed to.
Yeah.
I've never used that, but scent killing spray, camouflage, game cameras, grunt calls, synthetic ester scent. We got all these other advantages.
Yeah.
That, probably taken as a whole, given that we are not full-time hunters anymore. We all have to pay bills, and we live in this civilization, and we have these other obligations. We can't spend all this time in the woods to learn all this stuff.
Yeah.
Some of those, that's fine, but then where do you draw the line on that?
Yeah. Or where does it become something that is totally different from what it was?
Yeah. Where does just giving speaking very frankly, I don't understand how you could rifle hunt over corn. I don't understand why you would want to ever rifle hunt over corn. That to me is
unless your whole objective in the deepest depths of your heart was just to hunt the most efficient way to gather meat.
Yes.
Which is usually exactly the opposite for someone that would do that.
Yes.
That
exactly. If a feller needed to go kill a deer to feed his family, I absolutely get that. But if you have the means to do all this, to put up a big corn feeder, fill it with corn, put you up a big large stand and a camera right there to make sure the deer, exactly when the deer is coming by, you don't need the meat, more than likely.
Yeah. You could use your financial resources in other ways to procure protein.
Yes. So what are you gaining? What's I don't understand what your goals are here.
Right.
I don't understand the motivation.
Yeah.
Part of the appeal to me, and the reason I hunt the way I hunt is I like the anticipation and the not really knowing what's going to happen, the uncertainty.
The uncertainty.
That's what makes it, to me, this is an old story I've heard before about fishing, but a fisherman died, and he ended up in this place where with this creek, and it was full of fish, and every cast he was catching 3 and 4 and 5 pound bass, and he thought he was in heaven for the first hour, and then he realized he was in hell, because that absolute certainty about this is what's going to happen, that kills all the magic. That kills the whole experience.
I see.
You're not going to the grocery store. You're going out to pit your skills, ideally, and if you want to try to define hunting, I guess you're going out to pit your skills against the wild animal.
Yeah.
See if you can bring the animal home.
Now that would be an homage to what it would be a hat tip, because that's not what a Native American would have gone out into the woods for.
No.
He would have gone out there. He wasn't, I guess functionally he was pitting his skills against a wild animal, but he was going out there to get dinner.
To kill an animal to bring home.
So he didn't care if there was ceremony inside of it or not.
No, we ran, back in the Pleistocene, they ran them off cliffs. They'd run a herd of mammoth or bison off a bluff, and go down the bottom and butcher them.
Yeah.
So, no, all that sportsmanship and all that stuff, that's a construct of where we are today. Again, trying to pay tribute to the old ways.
Yeah.
But we have all these modern conveniences. So, again, we need some to offset, again, our lacks, because we don't have the time to spend out there to be full-time hunters. But where's the line there?
And we're using the pendulum, the furthest swing of possibilities of rifle hunting over a pile of corn as our analogy.
Probably going to make a lot of people say that, but
I don't care. I mean, I'm just like you. I've killed plenty of deer over corn with a bow mainly.
That's why, with a bow.
And I can talk about my thoughts on all that. But would it not be the efficiency that we've seen in every other part of life? I mean, is it not just the trend of the age, though? And I'm not defending it.
No,
I'm just
get what you're saying.
exploring it. Because like We drive faster cars. We drive smoother cars. We want faster internet. We want more efficient. Like, I don't want to call you on the phone anymore.
Yeah.
I want to text you
Mm-hmm.
because talking to you on the phone is too cumbersome
Mm-hmm.
because I have to greet you and do some pleasantries like, how are you doing? You doing all right?
Just want to get to the point.
I want to say, when are you going to be here?
Yeah. It is. It's the
Is
same.
that not hunting over? You know,
It is.
So it's like the trend of the age is moving towards that.
But is that?
Does that make? No, I'm not
No,
defending it.
No, and I get it, and that's what I'm saying though. Is that why I don't really understand then why you're hunting?
Yeah,
I mean, because
unless your motivation is just to gather meat in the most efficient way.
that would be it.
Yeah,
And I as a meat hunter, it's hard for me to find fault there. But at the same time, part of the whole the reason I like killing the deer for my meat is the experience.
yes.
You know, and you're losing that experience.
Try this on though. So it's almost like I'm going to compare it to a roller coaster. So a roller coaster is this false sense of adventure and danger that's totally calculated, totally safe.
Mm-hmm.
It actually has nothing inside of it that the emotions of being on that roller coaster causes you to believe is happening.
Yeah, that's
You
a good
understand what I'm saying?
analogy. Yeah, that's an excellent analogy.
Because like you get on a roller coaster to experience something in the human,
Mm-hmm.
to an homage. I love that word, man. You know, a hat tip to like when there was real danger,
Mm-hmm.
and if you were really in danger, and if you were really doing something wild and crazy, and you get on a roller coaster with no real danger and get to feel the highs and lows of thinking you're about to die, but not actually do it. I mean, so.
But we're kind of already doing that anyway with hunting because modern day hunting, because we have all these advantages. And we don't need, really, we don't have to kill these animals. We can go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
We don't have to go to any effort. We just go to the grocery store and buy the meat. But I don't, that's the big reason I don't hunt with a camera. I don't use a game camera, and that's everybody does it,
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm not saying anything bad about it. It's just a personal choice. I don't want to know that I can sit here this day and at 8:30 this buck's going to walk by.
Yeah.
I like the idea of putting in my time and figuring out if there's deer walking by just based on sign that I found. I found this rub line. Okay, I'm just going to put in my time here and earn this.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that.
What if making hunting easier? Well, I think the whole philosophy of making hunting easier has been for hunter recruitment. Do you think?
It has.
And so here we are in 2019. Civilization is moving away from us.
It is.
I mean, like the planet and its philosophies and its worldviews is moving away from us. And that is ultimately the biggest threat to our way of life. I mean, we're these guys living in the Ozarks that like, man, I like to be able to go out in my backyard and shoot deer. I like to be able to go bear hunt and have a liberal enough season that I actually have a chance of killing a bear. I want my sons, when they're 40 and 50 years old, to be able to do the same thing. How do I ensure that 50 years from now, this is going to be here? Do I make hunting harder? I'm not trying to prove a point.
I get what you're saying.
I'm asking you. Do we make hunting harder? Because the way that you're hunting is harder. Or do we keep making it easier? Because it's easy. It is easier. There's no doubt about it. To pour out a pile of corn and shoot a deer with a rifle. Because people want easier. So it's like, where is that line? Because, I mean, honestly, I think you see it happening in states where they have snuffed out, I'll use Colorado as an example. Can't bait in bear hunting in Colorado. Okay. You can't use hounds. They eliminated the spring season, and you can't use bait. All those things you used to could do. There used to be a thriving bear hunting culture in Colorado. Today, bear hunting in Colorado is as compared to other big game species in Colorado, the hunt is just the knees were taken out of it. Very few people.
They've increased the degree of difficulty so much that
it's pushed them out.
It takes diehards.
Yes.
And the diehards are a very small number. Yeah.
That's right. So if we in Arkansas And see, for me and you, this would be awesome if they said, you know what, you can't use game cameras, you can't use corn, and you can't use guns. So you got to use bows. And you know what? You can't even hunt on private land. You got to hunt on public land. Like, we would snuff hunting out.
Yeah.
Would we not?
Well,
tell me if I'm wrong.
I don't know. Okay.
Or would it make it stronger?
That's what I'm wondering. You know, one of the books that I read years ago that really helped shape who I am today was David Peterson's Heart's Blood.
Yeah.
And in that, he makes an argument that we don't need more hunters. We need better hunters.
Okay.
Now, he means, you know, conscientious is what he means, not necessarily more skilled.
Okay.
But I think that goes hand in hand. But the last polls I saw, most of the non-hunting public approve of hunting. You know,
right.
Politically, I don't think we're in danger. I actually think the biggest danger we have is when we decrease the level of difficulty to the point that non-hunters see it
as
as shooting fish in a barrel. That we're just going out there for bloodlust. That we're not, you know, paying homage like we said we were.
Mm-hmm.
That we're not, you know, trying to respect and hold on to this heritage, but we're just going out there to kill stuff. And so, you know, that actually concerns me more than dwindling hunting numbers. Now, there's a whole other as far as politically. Now let me add a caveat there. You know, of course, dwindling hunting numbers are not good for game agencies, for wildlife agencies, because that, you know, the bulk of their resources funding comes from license sales. Yeah, I think there are other ways around that too. But as far as, again, politically, I don't know.
Man, I like what you said, Johnny, because I wasn't building a case.
I didn't think that at all.
No.
You're playing devil's advocate.
I was building a case for why we should let it. Mm-hmm. But that feels to me like a Band-Aid.
It does. It is.
It feels like a fix that's not long-term, that eventually would end in some kind of really negative consequence. And we would end up in a place totally different from where we started.
Yes.
And I think that's totally a point that we're on the same page on.
I believe so.
So, and that's where the complexity of the issue is so hard to deal with. Do you fix the problem quick by making it easier, by making, you know, just making every limiting factor of hunting easier, less barriers to entry, you know, and fix it quick, but then make a bunch of people that are, for lack of a better term, and I'm not going to, a shallow hunter. I'm just going to use that term.
That's a good way to put it.
And those people don't value hunting, and so they don't pass it on to their kids in the same way that we have? Or do you have these guys that, you know, deeply value it and value it so much that they pass it on in great strength to their kids and pass it on? And do you see what I'm saying?
I think a shallow is the best way to describe it, because within the whole experience, you know, you lose all this richness just by sitting over a pile of corn. Yeah, you lose all this woodsmanship. I mean, you know, your dad probably taught you the same way mine did. We go out looking for tracks and rubs, and scrapes, and, you know, I mean, one of my earliest memories of hunting was Dad showing me where a squirrel chucked hickory nut. Yeah, you know, and this is going to be a good tree. You sit here and kill some squirrels. You know, but when you reduce it down to, okay, I know this buck or what, you know, does or whatever going to show up this corn pile at 2:00 in the afternoon. You're giving up all that hunting is.
Yes,
I mean, really and truly, what else is there? What is that? Isn't that really just killing? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's complex. It's complicated. There's a whole lot of different goals to consider, you know, and the best, you know, if our ultimate goal is to preserve hunting, I don't know if that's the best way. I see it as it's a Band-Aid. It's a way to bring in, you know, get a quick hit. People take.
I like what you said about how the perception of hunting could actually be more critical than than recruitment of hunters.
I believe that truly. I'm friends with some vegan folks, and they don't have a problem with me hunting. They don't have I'll say they don't have a problem. They don't like the idea of an animal, dying. But frankly speaking, that's not. We're consumers.
Yeah.
If you're living, there's other things dying because you're
even
living.
if you're eating vegan food.
Exactly. So
sure.
But getting the meat the way I get it, I don't think, and again, these are, folks that are vegans. Most people that don't hunt, that aren't vegans or vegetarians, I don't think they have a problem with that. Actually, I think they see some people that I've met that are opposed to a lot of the more, again, shallow types of hunting experiences. When I explain to them how I hunt, okay, I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
So I think that plays into our future. Probably, I think it's probably more important than numbers from the political perspective.
Yeah.
From the funding perspective, that's different. And then you got the Pittman Robertson thing and all that that's wrapped up into more hunters. And so I don't want to take away from that.
Right.
But where do you find a balance there?
We took this last weekend, my son turned 14 and he wanted to take some buddies from school hunting. One of them had never hunted and two of them had hunted quite a bit, but never with us. And, I was torn about how, on this private land over here, I could put them on a spot where they could probably kill a deer with a gun. We're gun hunting. And I was a little bit torn, especially with this new kid that had never hunted before, of putting him in the spot that I knew he'd kill a deer. But it's kind of hard to tell somebody that, like, I'm going to put you in a bad spot so that you don't kill a deer the first time you hunt.
Yeah.
I was torn because I wanted him to have a good experience and have fun and see deer. And then if we saw deer, he's probably going to get a shot at a deer. Anyway, but I was thinking about, boy, it took me years to kill a deer. And I know you too.
A long time.
Yeah, it took years to kill a deer. And that's why I value hunting so much. To this day, when I go out on private land over here, and I know where I can go sit tonight and see deer and maybe even kill a deer with my bow. Golly, my heart still skips a beat when I see a doe deer walking to me. And it's because when I was 11 years old and started bow hunting with my dad, I hunted seasons before I had a deer in bow range.
I was 21 before I killed my first deer.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up, I'm 48 now. We didn't have many deer, and we always went to Newton County to hunt. There were no deer there. We ran them with dogs because they were hard to find.
Yes.
And so, my kids, when, I guess in the 80s or in the 90s is when the population really boomed here in Arkansas and deer started popping up everywhere. And even today, when I see deer out in my backyard, it's almost like a magical experience, to see these deer out there. And I remember my kids when we were growing up, anytime I'd see a deer on the road, on the side of the road, like, oh my God, there's deer, And if we could, we'd pull over and look at them.
Yes.
And it's because, like you said, there were seasons went by when, I might see one doe. I might not see any deer.
Yeah.
Seeing a track was a big deal.
Yeah.
Seeing rubs were, oh my gosh.
What did that produce inside of us, though? It produced a deep appreciation that is hard to replicate today. Johnny, my kids have grown up around here with good deer numbers. We see deer, we don't see deer every day, but we see a lot of deer, way more than I would have when I was a kid, just in everyday life. I told my kids years ago, I said, in this truck, we're going to celebrate every time we see a deer, no matter how many we see. And I told them years ago, and River Newcomb could verify this because she reminded me of this the other day, but she said, I told them, I said, we can never get used to seeing deer and just drive by. I get upset with my wife. My wife loves us hunting and, she loves cooking deer meat, but she's not a hunter. She's not like, let's go hunting. Mm-hmm. And if she sees a deer and doesn't text me within an hour and give me a report, like if 2 days later she's like, "Yeah, I saw a deer," it's a big joke around our family. I act like I'm real mad. Doggone it! Why did you not tell me that? So I had to put a quote on her. I said, if you see a deer, I don't care if it's in Fayetteville or if it's, I need to know within 1 hour. I mean, the whole idea is to, in the culture of our family, to put value on just wildlife.
Yeah,
that's here because it is amazing. But it started with scarcity, though.
It did, and part of it too, though, is there's, some people are. I was always drawn to the woods and to the creeks and ponds and stuff like that, and you were probably the same way. There was a natural curiosity.
Yeah,
there was. I don't know why. And my grandpa, from the earliest age, I've talked about this or I've written about this, where he would, from when I was really young, he would bring me lizards and spiders and salamanders and snakes and stuff in jars, and we talk about them, and let them go and all that stuff. So this appreciation for nature and wildlife and all that stuff was fostered in me early, before I ever started hunting.
Yeah.
Before I ever started fishing, which fishing was one of my earliest memories. Is that where it comes from too? Is it, I think the scarcity is, you're right, but you and I had the perseverance to push through that. What gave us that?
Yeah.
Is that just a personality quirk?
Because some didn't.
I don't know. Some didn't.
Some didn't.
No, some didn't. Didn't stick.
Yeah.
I didn't.
It probably wouldn't have stuck with them if they'd have been handed deer their whole life.
Probably not. It probably wouldn't have mattered. Yeah. Either way.
Yeah.
So, are we maybe through this making things easier? Are we, in a sense, artificially inflating hunter numbers?
That's a good. You know what? I've heard that, like, in the population, there's probably some percentage of people that are naturally inclined to be really dedicated hunters.
It's very small.
Almost. I've never thought about it like this, but almost like in a litter of hounds. Like you can take well-bred hounds and have 10 puppies, and probably about 3 of them are going to really be what you want.
Mm-hmm.
The other 7 are going to have inklings of it, but probably not going to be exactly what you want.
Well, and there's different motives even for that segment of the population. I can't remember if he was a sociologist or an anthropologist. His name was Kellert, I believe. That did a study on hunters and their motives, their reasons for hunting, and he found 3 different general types. There was the trophy hunter, which there's a lot of negative connotations, a lot of negativity attached to that. But how he described it was someone that hunted for ego.
Yeah.
And then there was utilitarian hunter, which hunted to fill the freezer. And then there was a third type, and I believe he called it a naturalist hunter, which was someone that was, whereas the trophy hunter and the utilitarian hunter, they might know specifics about, the place, the tree species, all these different kinds of things to reach the end goal of killing a deer. The naturalist hunter tended to have a better understanding of the entire ecosystem.
Yeah.
Not just where the white oaks were, but also where the marbled salamanders were, where the screech owls were, all these other different aspects of the place and of the experience.
Yeah.
So, even within that segment, there that small segment of people that are drawn to hunting and stay involved in it, there's still a pretty broad range of reasons why.
Yeah. I think you can be all 3 of those, Johnny.
Boy, I don't know. I mean, there's overlap, obviously. Even within myself. But even with myself, like I said, I like big antlers. Yeah, I hunt to fill the freezer.
I think you would be an example of all 3, and I would hope that I would too.
Probably pretty close.
I like shooting big deer.
Yeah, and I think it's probably like a lot of other things in this world. It's a spectrum. There's not, it's not you don't necessarily fit in this slot, or this slot, but you tend to lean more one way or the other, and a lot of it may depend on the circumstances.
Yeah.
If I'm hunting Hollow Bend, which has big deer, I'm a little more selective about the bucks I'm shooting.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm also trying to fill the freezer, and at the same time, I'm also aware that I'm in a hackberry tree.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that the robins that come through are gonna, if there's a big flock of robins, they're gonna lie around me and eat hackberries.
Yeah.
So you can. I think you can be all 3.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Hadn't thought about that actually before.
Well, as you described those things, I was like, yeah, I would be that. I would be that sometimes, and I would be that.
Yeah.
But, I think in any human experience, the more you know, the more knowledge you have, the more insight you have, the more awareness that you have of your motivations, the richer this experience is going to be.
Exactly.
If you play golf, which there's a joke on this podcast about me not liking golf. Okay?
Yeah, I don't like golf either. So.
Okay, good, good. That's why you're here, Johnny. No, there's a friend of mine that has been on the podcast a couple of times. I'll name his name, James Brandenburg, who was a big golfer. And I was like, man, you're lucky to be on this podcast.
That's a lot of wildlife habitat.
Well, but if you understand, yeah, that's a lot of wildlife. That's good. That's good.
Potential wildlife habitat.
Yeah, and think of all the resource they used to make those golf balls that, they had to pull those nutrients from somewhere. No, but if you understood the game of golf, which I don't, but if you understood the foundations of the game and the cultural aspects of it and the intricacies of the athleticism and dedicate, it would be a rich experience as opposed to me and you this afternoon going out and playing a round of golf, and we'd just be like, this is ridiculous.
Yes, you're exactly
right.
And
so if we were connoisseurs of the game of golf and spent our whole lives doing it, and we understood the types of grass, and we understood the names of the ways that they designed fairways, and all the stuff that we don't know, it would be richer. Mm-hmm. It'd be a richer experience.
And in this day and age, we're gifted with all of this knowledge really at a few keystrokes away.
Oh,
I don't, and again, this is me. I don't understand why you wouldn't seek that out, because you're right. More knowledge, more understanding makes every experience, more awareness makes every experience richer.
Yeah.
But again, I understand just needing to fill the freezer. Comes to home.
Yeah.
I understand the allure of big horns, big antlers. I get it. But maybe understanding why you're doing these things.
Yeah, that's a powerful, powerful piece of it. Well, man, we'll have to get together again, do this again. There's 1,000 ways we could have took this conversation, so it's been good.
I still would, man. You're gonna make me think even more about the reasons why I choose the way to hunt the way I hunt.
Yeah,
I'm still.
I think that's a journey that, well, for sure, riders are on is the reason why. Why do we do the things we do? I think that's part of why we look and why we write. We try to communicate, and
it is. And I think a lot of this stuff there may not be answers.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I have a problem is I'm a guy that likes to have answers.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time accepting maybe the reality that there's not one.
I want to encourage people, look up Johnny Carrol Sain. Man, your writing's awesome. Really.
Well, thank you.
Like I was reading some of your stuff last night, and I was just like, man, this is good. Like I was challenged, just thinking, man, I don't write like that. So anyway, where can people find you? Where would be a good place for people to find you?
So I've got a website called The Philosophical Hillbilly, and you can Google that. And on that site, I've got a page that has bylines, and it's got a list of a lot of published stories. A couple other podcasts I did. I did one with Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Hal Herring, and then one with the National Wildlife Federation. You can go there to look at some stuff. I regularly write for Hatch Fly Fishing Magazine, Mid Current Fly Fishing Magazine, Arkansas Life. I've done some stuff for Quail Forever, which I'm not a quail hunter, but I may end up doing that this winter, going out with some of those guys. Man, just I don't know. I've written for several places. You can do
Field and Stream.
Yeah, Field and Stream a little bit years ago. Sporting Classics, various other publications, national and regional.
Yeah.
The best place would be go to my website. Like I said, to find bylines. That'd be the best place.
Cool. Closing thoughts? Anything we didn't talk about that you would like to?
All kinds of stuff we could talk about.
Part 2.
Yeah. It's a great conversation. I think, a lot of this this stuff that we talked about, again, there's not really any easy answers. There's
Yeah.
not even necessarily answers.
Or a right answer.
No, a right. We're just trying to find a path. I think, I want hunting. I want the outdoor hunting, fishing culture to extend, onto my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I want to find the best way to do that. I'm not sure what that is yet.
Yeah. I think a theme inside of this would be become introspective. And like here's what I'll say. A guy that's hunting with a rifle over corn, as long as he's being honest and he understands exactly what he's doing, then I don't have a problem with that as long as he's being honest.
I
Do you know what I'm saying?
I feel the same way. Yeah. Mostly the same way.
Mostly the same way. Yeah.
I have a hard time understanding it. I guess that's the thing. And I say that I really should have said this from the start, man. I'm a privileged guy. I'm a freelance writer. I work a lot, but I have control over my schedule.
Yes.
So I can make time to hunt. I can make time to scout. I know not everyone does that. I've worked, real jobs where I had my time was taken by this or that, and I did not have the time that I do now, that I enjoy now. So I don't want to, stand in my position, my privileged position, and look down on people that do things a certain way, because this is the cards they were dealt.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's very true. Time is often the limiting factor.
It is.
And that may be the biggest factor that's played into the rifle hunter over corn.
It may have.
It's just like I don't and here we're jumping into it again, but the guy that says I can hunt one Saturday a year, one weekend a year, I'm going to put out corn and use a rifle.
I'm going to tell you straight up, if I had one Saturday a year, I'd have corn and a rifle.
There we go.
I mean, that's just the truth. If I could hunt only weekends,
it'd be tough.
It'd be tough.
Well, I think, and I think more than what we're saying, it's hard to bring judgment on stuff that we don't do because we don't understand. And that's what you're saying is you don't understand it.
Mm-mm.
But I think all I'm asking is for people to be just honest about it.
Honest and thoughtful. Yeah,
just honest and thoughtful.
That would be all I would ask too.
Yeah, just be honest and thoughtful about it.
Yep.
Yeah. And then the game agencies of the states, they're the ones that ultimately make decisions that either allow that to be something that's legal or not. So that's pretty big stuff too.
That's a whole nother discussion too.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, hey, man, awesome. I'll, I can't end this without saying, because so much of what we've talked about on this podcast has been the ethics and rationale and reasoning behind hunting bears over bait. Just for the sake of somebody that's going to listen to this and say, well, geez, you were talking about how cool and good hunting over bait was for bear. Bear is different because a bear is a low density animal. Well, I'm not going to justify it. I'm just going to say this is what I would say if we had another hour to talk about this, is that deer is a high density animal with populations statewide numbering between probably 20 and 50 deer per square mile. Bears are a very low density animal, and being highly selective in bear hunting is advantageous for everything. We've got quotas. We've got basically a 400 bear quota in those, or 350 bear quota in the Ozarks. And basically they know in the Ouachitas they're not going to kill more than 150. So, we are trying to be selective. Mm-hmm. Do you understand?
It's a whole different.
So I want to say that because if somebody just flashed through this, they could go, well, geez, he's saying this, but he's saying that when he's around this guy. Now, when we talk about baiting, we talk about the ability to be highly selective, if you choose to be, and the ability to just hunt an animal that for all practical purposes is pretty difficult to hunt just spot and stalk out in national forest. And everybody would also know that my favorite way to hunt a bear is in the Ouachita National Forest and Ozark National Forest without bait, just hunting them like deer. And it's super tough.
That is very hard, yeah. I spent a lot of times in the mountains, and I have not seen that many bears.
Right.
They're just hard to...
They are, and so that's my favorite way to hunt them. But I also see the benefits of hunting a bear over bait.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because they're a large carnivore. That anyway, another story. I just wanted to put that in there just for anybody that was gonna get after me. So,
And on that note, I've never killed a bear.
Yeah,
I've never hunted a bear.
would you shoot a bear if he walked by you with your bow? Please tell me you would.
I don't know.
Have you ever eaten bear meat?
No.
Doggone it, Johnny. Man, I tell you what.
I've heard it's great. I've heard both sides. I've heard that it's horrible, and then I've heard that it's better than deer meat and venison.
If I gave you a pound of this ground bear meat that I killed in the Washita's this year, and you just ground it up, and it's ground meat, so you'd make chili or tacos, or it'd be as good a meat as you've ever eaten in your life, and you wouldn't taste a tinge of what people say is bad. I think the hype of people saying that bear meat is bad is 100% psychological.
But I think it's that way with all wild game. Because people have said they don't like venison, they don't like deer meat because it tastes gamey. No, that's just how deer taste.
Yeah.
It's not gamey. It's just different than beef.
Yeah.
And we have domesticated palates. We're used to pork, chicken, and beef.
Yeah.
And so you throw another,
it's different.
It's different.
Yeah.
Another level of complexity in there, and it throws people off. So I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
I honestly don't. I've had invitations to bear hunt. Like I say, with family in Newton County, there are bears everywhere, It's just something I don't know.
Just hadn't done.
Hadn't really wanted to.
Yeah, sure.
I don't really know why. I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with it. Maybe part of it because I don't want to have to pack one out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, man, we close this podcast every time, and I say the same thing. I say, keep the wild places wild because that's where the bears live. Thanks, John.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.